I think this is the kind of now the most interesting part. So how do we go from all the stories we did, all the videos we did, all these kind of conceptual things, how do we go towards making images? And I think today with this now ChatGPT and with this Midjurney and all of this kind of AI, we are going towards a kind of a setup which is almost going in the direction of writing images, of writing architecture. And then it gets funny because kind of printing architecture, everyone kind of gets it. You say printing architecture, we are very good, but then printing goes together with reading and writing. So if we can print architecture, how do we read and write architecture? And then again we are on the level of literacy, we are on the level of coding. So how to think of all of this? What are images actually? And again we want to set up the stage as we did for the text and for the images. So we want to have the plenty. We want to have all the models, all the images, and we want to play with them and in a way create a scene. So what we will do, we will try to approach architecture from the perspective of theater, from the perspective of scenography. This is a little bit reductive at first glance, but I think in our tripod we don't call the scene architecture. What we call architecture is the relationship between the text, the model, and the image. So all of this is architecture. Therefore, to look at this as a kind of scenography which leads us towards architecture, I think it's kind of fruitful. And then also the question is, how do we think of models and these things? And there is a very nice text by Werner Oxlin, and there he writes, the model creates a ground, the model, and he thinks not only of an architectural model, so you can think of it as a scientific model, biological model, economic model, whichever model, yeah? But now we focus on architectural model. The model creates a ground in the abstract, a few points which one can reach in the darkness. It helps us to articulate abstract ideas that would otherwise remain unreachable and hidden. The model lies between abstract conceptions and contingent realities. It's a testing ground rather than a direct representation of reality. And I think this is where the whole problem with science kind of becomes apparent. Usually we get the impression, of course scientists don't believe it, but how it's communicated to us is that the model is direct connection to reality, but the model is a way how to look. And the beauty of architectural model is that it's really there for us to play with and to test how to get to architecture. So it's just one of the steps which will open up certain questions which we couldn't see before. So it's a kind of, I like this, a testing ground rather than a direct representation of reality. A bridge between theory and praxis, observation and insight, empirics and logics, sensory experience and abstract mathematical insight. And this is, in my understanding, valid not only for architecture, but for any kind of modeling, from, let's say, fashion modeling to mathematical modeling. And I think these kind of images are beautiful. So this is the Borghese Palace, and I tried to do the same story. I started with the Garden of Delights from, what's his name? Bosch. You know this painting? This one, yeah? And I thought, wow, this is nice in a sense of scenographies. You have a kind of a triptych, and then this triptych gets folded, and you have different stories and so on. And then I started to look what are the stories around, and it's terrible. It's this kind of middle-aged moralistic stuff.
The symbolics.
It's symbolics, but they're all moral.
Yeah.
And then I found a lecture of a guy who found 1,000 moral stories around this, and I was like, shit, it's not going to work. And then I just changed towards this, and these stories here are just beautiful. So if you look at the building and all the stories who are the main protagonists, and so on. So check a little bit what was going on and what kind of collections are these. And all the stories are like, I love them. Yeah? All the stories connected to this, fantastic. All the stories connected to this, terrible. And I thought, okay, this is like a house from outside. This is a house from inside. I developed the whole scenography, how to talk about it. And then I was like,
So burning swords and stuff.
Yeah, and they're always in kind of strange things. So he's a kind of a village monk, and then nothing works properly. And with these things, all the stories are beautiful and just work in a beautiful way. So we have the plenty. We will try to play with the plenty as always, so not starting from scratch, always start with a lot of stuff. And then what's important is that we, in a way, are responsible towards resources that we collect. And this is this story. So some kind of resources have certain energy and the others one have different energy. So you should collect objects that you think emit energies that you want to work with. So stuff that you like. Of course, if you want to go in these moralistic stories and so on, then you go with Hieronymus Bosch and you show him to a certain way and so on. But try to find things that talk to you with energies that you want to work with. Yeah? That's kind of important. The second thing which is important now when we are going towards modeling is that we want to go beyond functionalism. This is very tricky to think in architecture because everything is organized by functions, yeah? And especially on the level of cities. Yeah? We think in functions, we think in the way how the function manifests towards something and so on. And we will show examples later. Before the 19th century, we didn't think of architecture in terms of functions. So Baroque villas, Renaissance villas, and so on, they are not organized around functions. I would say that they are more organized around objects that make space. And I think here it's an interesting hypothesis is that objects don't take space, they make spaces. And they talk to us in different ways. And today with the Midjurney and all of these things, it's funny to see that it's going towards a kind of a writing, towards a kind of a literacy, towards a kind of talking. And then how to think of an image. And Ricardo, who was last week here, he wrote the whole PhD about this, and this is how he starts. And I like this thing very much. So he says, what's with the image? What is an image? To present work picks up the challenge offered by such paradox under the sign of image. And so what is an image? Image is a medium par excellence. It's a copy, so it's not the original. It's fictional, it's not real. It's accidental, it's not substantial. It's ornamental, not structural. It's subjective rather than objective. It's part of the imaginary and not of the real. It's subject to an interpretation, not to calculus. It's representative, not effective. It's contingent rather than necessary. It's religious, not scientific. So these things we can debate, but it's kind of funny when you put these things together, because then we get the idea that the image is not true. The image is a funny thing that needs to be constructed, and especially if you go, for instance, with the idea image of the world, or the world image, or the world picture. So we construct certain idea of what is the world. It's a world image. So image is not just a painting. Image can be, you can have a mental image. You can see things in your head, you can imagine things, and image comes from imagination. So from trying to explore, and in this sense I think it's quite close to the understanding of a kind of a modeling. So what would be a model and what would be an image? I think these things can kind of cross spaces. But what is important here is that you get a feeling that images don't appear. You have to construct images. you have to work with them. Yeah? They are fictional, you have to see what you want to show, how you want to show, where do you want to take someone, how do you bring things together, and what is then coming out of these things, what kind of story is coming out. So how to tell stories, how to imagine things, how to make an image of the world. And I think in a broader sense, we can think of what we are doing in an architectural project. We are creating an image of your project, but in a broader sense. And now we want to go to the detail and to the craft of an image, and in a sense of architecture through it. Yeah? So I think these things overlap. So don't think of an image as something which is on the wall. I think we are now making an image in a sense. We are making a model in a sense, and by putting this model in relation to text and to the movies and what we did before, this all together creates something that we call architecture. And now I will show random examples from the world. I like this kind of style that come from many different sources, and I'll try to kind of debate of what I think is an image, or what I think, how do we construct images. What is beautiful with scenographies and with theater, and this is what we will try to push, is that when you go to a theater, you sit in the audience, and then there is a certain thing in front of you, yeah? Which is called the stage. What happens on the stage is determined by the story that's being said. So there is a text present, yeah? It's just not literally on the stage, but it's all around the stage. And then you have to think, what objects do I put on the stage that will help me to tell the story? And the objects that you put is exactly not what you are saying with the text. So what the actors are saying has nothing to do with the objects on the stage in terms of literal connection, but it has everything to do because it accommodates the text. Yeah? So you are creating an image by putting in relation the text with certain objects that are on the stage. What's great there is that the audience cannot move. So the view, how we look at this thing, is fixed. Because it's fixed, it means that we can fake everything which is not in the first plan. Yeah? So you have the thing that you are looking, this is what you want to create, a certain coherence, but you don't care what's on the left and you don't care what's on the right, you don't care what's on the back, so you're really playing a stage play. And then if you put a table and then you put a bottle of Coca-Cola, it's very different than if you put a table and you put the best champagne, for instance, Dom Perignon or something like this. It creates immediately a different kind of story. So in this sense, it's very important to give credit to the objects that you want to work with, because they will create some kind of space. Coca-Cola creates different space than a good bottle of wine. Diamonds create different space than, I don't know, something else. Yeah? And one of the guys that I really love how he creates his spaces is this guy. Yeah? Look at this intro. And then what's the name? He builds his own habitat. Yeah? So now this is R. William of Baskerville, and look at him, how he looks very comfortable in this space. And I think this is like a perfect picture for him. He feels happy here. And now let's look a little bit what kind of objects he collects and what kind of objects he produces.
We are in the Engadine Valley, in a place called Saint, which is located not far from the Italian and the Austrian border. And this is the village where I was born, where my family has been living for hundreds of years. And we're in my studio, which had...
What kind of studio he makes in his village? Very funny. He wants to provoke the village and be in a kind of a funny contact with them.
There's no windows actually.
But he doesn't want to look at them.
Well, my work branches out in many directions.
Second object, huh?
I'm a sculptor, but then I moved on to drawing, also made drawings at the same time, and I've always been interested also in building since I was very young. I don't think that's not atypical if you're from here, because we're kind of.
Then he has a lake, and then he creates the platform, and then he wants to pet the fish.
Look at this.
And he's like, hello. And then he created, so he's very rich obviously, yeah? So he created, all of these are his sculptures, it's his landscape, everything is his. Yeah?
This is actually my studio in
nevertheless, he
Beijing.
went to create
house.
all these
this
spaces.
person who built the studio, this architect from Japan, he had completely carte blanche, but he had to be like this height. One thing I really like are multifunctional things, and there are not so many that I know. But one is like this handrail and the water pipe. So that's why this is done here, because you need water over here, at the same time this is also a handrail.
And see,
it's an optical
stories, yeah?
illusion. It doesn't look that it's flat, no, but it is. We're making now the
see
seats.
what kind of crazy
like
stuff
it's going to be. Usually we just
Look at
sat in
this
the
now,
grass.
this is for Daniela.
Top and the bottom is almost the same. So it's this variation which.
What kind of
They
horse
have
is it?
names. No, horse.
I mean, look at this. It's horse, but it's not horse. It's kind of quite rare to find this kind of horses. These horses have the pattern of dogs, yeah?
This is the guy you showed us before,
Yeah.
the sexy guy.
He's incredible. Yeah.
Horse, no. This one is called. This one is called Giotto.
Names.
And the other one is called
yeah?
Lord.
And the other one is Lord. But check this documentary in a sense of how do you build a habitat. So if you can have anything you want, what do you do? That's kind of tricky. I think this Arbilian is in this kind of, position. Yeah? And you see that this guy fits to this surrounding. Okay, let's look another example from the same angle. Huh? Batman, for instance. Now look at, like for instance, when you all know stories around Batman, yeah? So now they are at his home, and now look at this guy, what kind of back he has, huh? This is the Batman, he has very strong back full of scars. So now, what kind of house a guy who wears a mask of a bat and who has very strong body full of scars, where does he live? What's his house like? What kind of drinks he has on? It fits perfectly, huh? The house fits to the story. The chairs, the butler, the cups for the tea, all of this fits to this story. So he's
just
one with the environment in a way. Huh? So I think this coherence we need to find between the characters and the spaces they inhabit. And I think with movies and with theater, they really know these games well. Huh? They know how to play them, how they are dressed, all of these fits. Even the car he's driving fits to the story he wants to tell. Another video of so these are all Batman. I don't know if you Andy Warhol. Okay, let's go first to Moriyama's son and then to Andy Warhol. And look how this is done. This is like it's done with us. Sound. And look at now what's happening. The titles, Japanese architecture. Noise music. It's a portrait of the house. Acrobatic reading. Blood. This is your trailer,
Happy birthday.
Not like that.
It's funny that how they portray the house. So this movie is a portrait of the house, and this trailer is a portrait of the movie. Yeah? And they portray the house through beauty, through sake, through the birthday, through this, through that, and so on. And by the end, when they show these 10 squares are full. And the rituals, acrobatic reading, the noise music, all the stuff that we are actually working with, here in the trailer is explicitly shown how it works. Yeah? You portray the house through a set of concepts and you create rituals which define spaces. And by the end, these are not 10 random squares. These squares are very full, and this is one of the most famous houses in the world. And this movie is fantastic, so check it. Moriyama-san, very beautiful portrait of a house. Very, very nice. And now from this, let's go more towards a kind of a branding. So here it's about the character that's making the space. So the character is not Vital, the character is Batman. This Moriyama-san is a character that kind of creates the space in a way. And for instance, what kind of space does Andy Warhol make? This is also a set of very beautiful documentaries on Netflix. It's called The Diaries. Yeah? Fantastic stuff. And very nice way of using AI. So it's his diaries that he kind of dictated to a person that writes, and then an AI with his voice reads the diaries.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, action. Andy Warhol's greatest work of art is Andy Warhol. He was big.
Genius.
Art, music, film, fashion.
He created his own style, his own affectations.
Icon Andy was creating contemporary culture.
I am Warhol. No one's more famous in the 20th century than Andy Warhol. Andy.
But I don't think you'll ever figure Warhol out, and I hope no one ever does. The wig, what he says, that's a guise.
The diaries are Andy's thoughts in Andy's words. No other part of his work shows this.
I went down to the office because they were making a robot of me.
Andy's wish is finally coming true.
Warhol was so good at hiding parts of his life.
Was Andy out? Well, he was never in, so...
There's all of these little stories that are still there to be uncovered.
And I saw Andy screaming in pain.
The Catholic imagery that surely is related to the AIDS crisis.
There are things that you can see in the work. If you look for it.
This quote of his, "You want to know anything about my work, look behind it, there's nothing there," is really just not true. Within the diaries, there are these clues that he did have these intimate relationships.
Andy was in love with Basquiat. I don't know if it was sexual, but there was a relationship there.
He broke every rule. He made you look at things in a completely different way, but that's what art is.
He was just very sensitive about where he fit in.
There was this dream, this desire to be someone else, to escape.
I'm just a freak. I wasn't very close to anyone. Although, I guess I wanted to be.
And then with him, it's funny, again, the whole spectrum of things he was doing, yeah? From fashion, from painting, from sculpture, from performance, from NDTV. So he had his own TV channel, he had everything, yeah? He had his own working factory, he was doing porn movies, he was doing everything, and then it was so off that then they shot him, yeah, at one moment, and then he wake up from the dead, and then he continued. Very, very, very interesting character, and very nice way how this movie is done, to see how a person creates a universe around him. So it's similar to this Not Vital, but this was much earlier and much more turbo and strong. And this is also a beautiful set of documentaries of kind of untold stories. So this is how you sell a brand. So these guys were competing with Nike. Yeah? So they were developing sneakers, and they wanted to compete with Nike. And then they said, okay, fuck, we're going to find now the best young guy at the university, and we're going to invest all our money into this guy, and he's going to wear our sneakers. And they said, we go all in. They found a guy who plays really good basketball. They invested the money, everything goes as planned, it goes to the draft, the guy is the first selected, first draft choice. So they are like winning completely, and he has their shoes, yeah? And then the first game starts and the guy breaks his leg. Like after 2 minutes in their shoes. And they're like, we are done, it's over. It's over with us, we have to do something, like it's a complete collapse. And then one of the guys who was sitting at this deadly meeting said, we have to think of some kind of new branding. Here is a video cassette with some street ball stuff. And now look what's happening.
You the N1 mixtape on video.
Street basketball is our culture. N1 took it to another level. A lot of people say whatever happened to N1. I don't know what happened, and I was a part of it.
Street ball is hip-hop, graffiti, breakdancing, all in one.
It's just pure self-expression, and it's
just broadening, huh? You always go broaden up. You say, so what do? You want to sell sneakers, and then what do? You identify your sneakers with street ball, and then you create the story around the street ball in order to say to your sneakers. So these guys created the story around street ball. They invented this shit, yeah, to sell their sneakers by connecting it to all the different layers of street culture. So you go from the sneakers to the world, and then you go back to the shop and sell the sneakers. Yeah, that's the game. How you do the global thing.
It's the essence of N1. When we started, Nike had the merchandise market on lockdown. It was like taking on Goliath. But we had this insane viral marketing in the pre-internet age.
N1 is sweeping the nation, becoming one of the biggest basketball brands.
Product flew off the shelf. You guys was rock stars. Went from 0 to 65 million in 18 months. I was like, holy F.
Who knew that everything we've been building was going to go up in smoke?
Everybody started thinking about the money.
There was fracturing of relationships.
Basically what these guys did, they went with the camera around neighborhoods, and they were filming good kids playing good basketball. They were filming this, making videotapes of this, and putting their shoe brand on top, and then sending these videotapes as far as possible. And by this, all the people who are in the videotapes, they like to share it because it's them playing, and they get associated with a certain brand. So they're doing, it's a win-win marketing for both. So it was just perfect how they did it. Then of course there was a money problem, and it kind of got destroyed. And the next day Nike took the whole thing. So from then on, Nike did the marketing for street ball. the moment they did it, because Nike was focused on NBA, on professionals, and these guys were doing the street ball. The moment they fell apart, Nike just took the street ball as well, and they did it 10 times better, of course.
It was the downfall of everything.
1, 2, 3.
We were trying to catch lightning in the bottle.
When you create a monster, you gotta know how to tame a monster.
1, 2, 3.
So this is, I think, what's the point here is that the product is not the product. The product is the stories which you associate with the product. Nobody cares about the shoes. These shoes, Nike shoes or Reebok shoes, they're all the same basically. So you don't care. Of course, there are differences. But it doesn't matter. You want to buy the shoes that you kind of want to associate with yourself in terms of certain values. Even though you don't do it consciously, it happens. Sometimes you do it consciously, sometimes not. But these things are around. So they create a kind of a fictional scenography around the thing they want to sell. And then they just go with it.
It's also the biggest differentiation, I think, between Apple and Microsoft. So Apple always tells the story about the big players, and you as a small person can create the whole world. And Microsoft is all about performance and being better than the other ones, but Apple plays their own game. So they don't care about Microsoft. At least they don't market it like this.
Yeah, this is interesting then to see, for instance, how would you differentiate between Microsoft, Google, and Apple, and then to make profiles and see how are they different and how are they the same. For instance, this can be interesting exercises for architectural projects, to look at these things in different ways. And now let's go the same story from the perspective of objects. This was from the perspective of characters, and now from the perspective of objects, or from the perspective of houses. These are all my heroes. I love this guy, and I love this house. This is my favorite house. If I could choose, I would live here. The video is a little bit shit.
Have you seen Soll? You've gone there?
This is a little bit too romantic. Video, it's not as good as the other one on architecture, but this guy is just insane. The church music is a little bit shit as well.
Era muy joven, tenía muchas ganas de cambiar el mundo y me expulsaron de la universidad y empecé a viajar y a construir y me convertí en un nómada.
Like William, look at the house. It's just insane.
Saliendo de Barcelona en el coche, pues vi que había una fábrica que echaba humo, que era esta, la fábrica de cemento, la más antigua de España, con la chimenea más alta, pero que estaba pues polucionando pues todos los alrededores, y me enteré que la cerraba y se trasladaba. Quise comprar todo el terreno para ocupar la fábrica y ponerme a vivir y a trabajar y a desarrollar mi equipo de trabajo con sociólogos, filósofos, matemáticos, pintores.
So these kind of ideas of bringing all of these things together are not so strange. All the cool guys did it, You see, like I like with him that he's a kind of people don't like him that much, especially not architects. Because he's not coming from the established architects, he's coming from the developers' side. His family was a family of developers, so they are with the money, rich, and they do whatever they like. And then this guy just buys a concrete factory, and then next to it creates a beautiful house and so on. And he brings people he likes, sociologists, philosophers, mathematicians, painters, writers. Let's do architecture. Fantastic.
Escritores.
Look at this. I mean, I don't know why would anyone want to have a scene like this, where they show him like a god.
Cheesy, no?
It's very cheesy.
Also super cheesy.
La casa es una ruina reestructurada y rehecha, donde los espacios sirven para todo.
It's unbelievable, the house.
La ventaja de este laberinto es que la gente no se encuentre, que cada cual puede hacer una vida como quiera. Este es un lugar en el cual la casa tradicional no está concebida. Este lugar iba transformándose en un lugar verde, ya que no saciaba humo, que la chimenea, en lugar de ver una chimenea sacando humo, se vería como un cilindro, como una escultura. Y como todo esto se hizo con una actitud muy minimalista, con una actitud muy sencilla, con una actitud de materiales pobres.
Yeah, check it. I mean, I just like this guy a lot, how he talks.
No me gusta la apariencia.
What he does, and then another project of his, which is fantastic. This changed my understanding of what is social housing. So they always portray this social housing as kind of, helping the poor and all of this kind of, la la la. And then you go here and you look at this and they say this is social housing and you're like, wow. And if you go there and see people there, they're so proud. And they kind of, you just make a cool house. So here it's incredible the energy this place gives to people. Yeah? So it's kind of, this is what social housing is about, in my understanding, about giving pride to the people and not about helping the poor. This is about giving pride.
And the interesting thing is also that he facilitated this all through pre-manufacturing. So he used concrete pre-manufacturing to cut the cost.
It's all prefab.
Yeah.
And if you look at the elements, all the elements around are coming from classical architecture. Yeah? So you have, here is the ancient theater, here is the Arc de Triomphe, and so on. So all of this goes from there to the modernist ideas of an internal street and blah, blah, blah. Yeah? So you have the whole architectural assemblage of things which he brings together in order to create this thing. And it's just so powerful.
Je ne me vois pas partir. Et j'ai mes petites habitudes, j'ai mes voisins. J'aime bien rentrer chez moi et me dire qu'ici c'est chez moi.
And of course, when you have this good house, all the movies are being filmed there.
Léra, un rat qui vient de passer. Mais c'est pas grave, on est habitués, nous. On vit très bien avec les rats. On vit avec les rats. On vit avec les rats, on vit avec la crasse.
Ce lieu a été à l'abandon du côté des pouvoirs publics. Le maire voulait le détruire, il avait clairement exprimé sa volonté de le détruire. Alors ça, c'est extrêmement violent. Quand tu dis à un groupe de gens qui habitent dans un lieu « je veux détruire votre lieu », tu es en train de leur dire « je ne veux pas de vous ». Et ça, c'est un truc dont je suis très ému quand je dis ça, parce que je le sens dans la société dans laquelle on est. C'est un truc dont nous souffrons tous.
Je suis bien chez moi. Je pourrais pas vivre, je pense pas vivre ailleurs.
And it has a very funny atmosphere, this place. You don't know. What I like there is that you feel a little bit scared when you are there. So this place belongs to someone. Yeah? It's not this kind of, nobody cares. It's kind of, there is a certain element of belonging, a certain element of proudness. It's kind of complicated if you want to take photos. When we were there taking photos, every time we had problems. Yeah, some kids would come and and so on. But it's funny, it's kind of it's not dangerous, but it's not dangerous. It's something in between. Very, very funny and strong place. And there you have this Brazil movie was filmed by Terry Gilliam from what's the name? The Ministry of Silly Walks.
Monty Python.
From the Monty Python, so he was filming it there, and then the Hunger Games were filmed there as well. So then you get a certain profile of movies which come to this house to be filmed, because this house has a certain energy that you want to have in your movies. So it's not random that some movies are filmed. We will go to the queen of all the movies. Okay, let's go to the queen of all the movies immediately.
Now,
Tennis house in the Ennis House in the Los Feliz Hills is among the most photographed home in Los Angeles, with dozens of appearances on the big screen.
SkyCal's Desmond Shaw takes a look at this historic property, which was built nearly 100 years ago.
Well, take a look at this world-famous home in Los Feliz. This is the Ennis House, quickly approaching its 100th birthday. This is definitely one of, if not the most famous and iconic home that Frank Lloyd Wright built in Los Angeles, and that's really saying something. The architectural style here is known as Mayan Revival. It was originally built for retail tycoon Charles Ennis and his wife Mabel, and this is the last and largest of what Wright referred to as his textile block homes. It's about 6,000 square feet. According to Architectural Digest, that name comes from these 27,000 individual perforated and patterned decomposed granite blocks all woven together with steel rods. And when this home was completed, Wright declared that it was his favorite that he built, and indeed it's one of LA's favorite homes, partly because it is so visible.
What's interesting here with this house, why I like it a lot, is that it really has so many movies and so many things are filmed there. Yeah? If you go and check, for instance, it has its IMDb page, yeah? Filming location, Ennis House. Look at this: Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Blade Runner, Twin Peaks, Rush Hour, Predator, and I don't know, like, look at this. Huh? These are just these things that these guys listed. And what's interesting here is then that this house collects certain characters from the movies that live in it. But the more characters come and the more movies are filmed, the house gets a very specific profile. So it's not gonna, for instance, I don't know who, the Friends, yeah? This TV show, The Friends or Seinfeld, they would never be filmed in this house because this house has a different energy. It's not the Seinfeld energy. It's not the Friends energy. It's Blade Runner energy, yeah? It's a different, it has a little bit of this dystopian, almost like Bokhari moment. I think that's interesting to see how specific houses bring specific energies and specific characters. So they, in a way, create more spaces. And once you get into a history of these things get beautiful. Huh? So I just want to make this relationship between objects and their stories, how this thing goes on, because this is what we need to work with now in a way. Where is my presentation here? And now I was not aware with Mecca how cool this looks like. Have you seen Mecca how this looks?
لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك له لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك لبيك والنعمة.
So how do you construct a house around a ritual? So here you have a whole thing constructed around one ritual, and the message that this thing is saying, I want to be of the world. That's interesting. You rarely see houses and objects which don't talk to a local public. Yeah? So this is not about the local public. It's not about the people from Mecca. Yeah? It's not about the people from Saudi Arabia. Of course it is, but it's about all the Muslims in the world. Yeah? So it wants to bring all the Muslims in the world, and then it creates this stage on 75 floors. It brings the Big Ben in, it brings all these huge buildings, creates a stage for specific, and look at the surrounding, it's like this. Yeah? So it actually creates a city in situ, directly around a ritual, and saying, I'm not local, I'm global. That's funny. I would really love to go there to see this kind, because if you think what objects in the world, what houses and architectures in the world are able to talk about the world directly. Huh? I'm not allowed to go there, I know this, but maybe I can go to some of the towers. I was talking to Adil, yeah, last night, but I was not aware of how huge this is.
You can go in disguise, maybe.
Yeah.
Some people do that.
So impressive, and
but you can go in the helicopter.
Hmm?
In the skies?
No, just to Mecca. You're not allowed to.
I'm not.
But there is a certain perimeter until where you can go. Can you go, for instance, to the tower or not?
It's a hotel.
To the hotel you can go, yeah?
You can go there.
Yeah, this would be fantastic. I cannot believe, huh? But for me, what's interesting conceptually is that you put one stone there. So this stone is like this big, it's a black stone, this big. You put it there and then you just start spinning around and you are spinning and this thing is just growing. The more money you have, you invest there and you create it. I don't know exactly what happened there and so on, but it's impressive to create a world object around a ritual and one black stone. Yeah?
It's
Same
not about
thing.
the stone though, it's about the building itself.
But the thing of worship is the stone, yeah? No, it's the building.
It's God, but it's just a fixed point. It's, yeah. But it's about the building itself more than the stone.
Yeah. Same thing, a kind of European version 200 years before. It's the Versailles, huh? So this is the same story. Why I want to show Versailles is because for us it's important that this house doesn't have corridors. And corridors...
But only for the people working there in the background.
Yeah, but we don't see this. Yeah. So let's stay conceptually clean. It has no corridors. Yeah? So it's an enfilade. Yeah? You go from one room to the other room directly. And corridors are always when you want to separate functions. So you have the clean corridor, you have the dirty corridor, and then you have different rooms from one or the other. So these things work like this. And then when you have this enfilade, this means that there are no specific functions in it. And then you look at the names, huh? Drawing room of plenty. It fits again with the stories that we are talking about. Venus drawing room, Diana drawing room, Mars drawing room, Mercury drawing room, guard room, hall of ballets. Yeah? So these kind of things, and they always have their names, and they have specific scenographies inside of them. Yeah? Then you have the hall of the mirrors. This is the main one. And then what's interesting, when you go from, for instance, from this room towards here, this is what I love about Baroque so much, is that, so they want to have everything out of marble, yeah? But then these rooms here, it's wood, painted marble. Yeah? So it's painted marble on top of wood. And the more you go towards the center, it becomes more and more real marble. And then once you get to the hall of mirrors, it's full stone, everything is real, and the mirrors are there. And it's like in Vienna, in this, I think it's Karlskirche, next to Karlsplatz, this Baroque church. And if you go there as well, things which are on the ground, they are real, and the more you go up, it's more and more fake. And then even in the section, there was, last year they were rebuilding it so you could go really with an elevator to the top. And then when you have the section, and then I don't know, something is, so this is for instance the section, yeah? And then if the painting is here, and you would look at it from here, they would start painting here. So they wouldn't even paint the part you could not see. They would just start painting the things that you could see, and it would be much less details than the things on the ground, yeah?
Yeah, also the Eames house is this the one with, I also put it up, this one, where they show like this personal box of things of them.
Yeah. This is a great example as well. These people, the Eames people, they are cool, huh? You have their stuff, and then you have this, the powers of 10 movies and so on. So this is a good example as well. Yeah? And now, on again the same stories, more examples from different sides. Huh? One other exhibition which was kind of fantastically disappointing in a way was in in Prada. Now it's Kolha's time.
Incredible pleasure to work with Salvador and Fondazione Prada for the third time on antiquity. And what I think you see here in this third time is the advantages of working with the same team. Because by understanding each other better and better, I think we were able to kind of merge the studies in a certain way and create a kind of concept for the exhibition that sees itself mainly as kind of supporting a polemic. I think that the more better I got to know Salvador Settis, the more I realized that you are actually a polemicist. And that is kind of very clear resonance with my own character, whether we want to or not. And I think also Mircea Prada is part of that kind of mentality, a mentality which never takes anything for granted and that is able to see connections that are typically relatively hidden. I think what has been in all these exhibitions so interesting, and for me the most recognizable part of the polemic is that if you look at the art world today,
listen what he's going to say now. This is very important.
Or the world of architecture, we are almost in a corset of good intentions, and more our room for maneuver is extremely limited, and we are almost forced to behave well. And I think
this is what describes today's time. He said we are in a corset of good intentions. So all art has to have good intentions, and we have to always be in a good will, and we have to be polite and everything. So art is not anymore about challenging things, it's about telling us how we are well behaved. So this is the political correctness, good intentions, and so on. It's not provoking anything, it's just kind of putting the status quo and saying, look how cool we are and how polite we are. And I love that these kind of guys are, for them, it's so clear.
We are almost forced to behave well. And I think that by playing with antiquity, because I think that's in a certain way what you're doing, playing with antiquity, we are able, in a subversive way, which is not directly in your face, to play with the current, to comment on the current condition of art, and first of all, I think that's in a certain way what you.
And then what's interesting with this exhibition is first I like the title, so it's recycling, but it's not recycling which is recycling energy on optimizing something. It's about recycling beauty, and all the objects which these guys collected and put there are kind of objects that are a little bit bastards. So they changed their stories completely changed during time in different ways. So for instance, these guys were, I think, ancient sculptures, and then in the 18th century the Romantics or the classicist French guys, they kind of changed the heads, so they would kind of swap the heads from one god to another god, or if there were 3 kings and then you would need 3 apostles, they would just, chisel it a little bit and switch the stories, and they would use these old things and they would just rewrite the stories around them. So these stones kind of experienced many different lives, and one of the funniest one is, where is it? This one, yeah? So this was a Roman toilet. This is a Roman toilet that became a place where you pontify the Pope. So it went from the toilet to the seat, major seat of the Pope, yeah? Because it's done in this red marble and so on. So all of these guys, all of these sculptures have this kind of funny stories of who they are. My only kind of what I was hearing there is that they did these games from ancient times until 1800s. And I think what becomes interesting is that these guys now in the digital, this game just unfolds 10 times more. Yeah? So now this chair is not anymore only Roman toilet and the Pope's chair. Now it's everybody's 3D model that you can download from anywhere, and it would be funny if they kind of push this and showed how this chair now lives with all of us, or I don't know, whatever, somehow show how some of these sculptures become part of the pop culture and so on. Like, for instance, this catastrophe that the Italians did with what's the name? Aphrodite, yeah? Is it Aphrodite?
Venus, yeah.
Venus.
From Botticelli.
And how is it called? Miracle.
Meraviglia. Yes, something Meraviglia.
Have you seen this? This is the Italian kind of commercial, tourist commercial. Yeah? So, I mean, it's catastrophe, but it's just the next step of. They took Botticelli, yeah, and then they put it on a regular woman next to all the money. It's like my mother made a tourist commercial for Italy. Yeah? But I think for instance for this exhibition, you can find many sophisticated examples around these things, yeah? So they don't have to be like, but you see the games people are playing around. And it's really big. The Italians are making fun of this. And of course it's happening in Italy, yeah? With their culture, it's insane. Another movie, now we go towards the cars. So this is the same people who did the Moriyama-san movie. They have an interview with Nishizawa. And of course Nishizawa, he doesn't drive a random car. He drives a 70s Alfa Romeo Giulia.
People don't trust.
People don't trust the God.
Do you trust? Me? Oh yeah.
And he trusts the gods, yeah? You see, this is very important.
Do you trust? Me? Oh yeah.
Me? Oh yeah. And then just let's run. Let's not talk about it too much. So it's another beautiful movie around him.
Very similar. Yeah, sometimes I saw some small photo and I thought, oh, my photo. And then I realized, no, it's not me. But
look at her, huh, in her environment. And then he talks about architecture.
The European architecture belongs to the continent culture. The Chinese too. They are really, to me, now, language is really now, like a brick. They suck each other, very logical. But Japanese architecture and then South Asian architecture is more raw, I think. The language that they will use.
The island architecture is like verbs and continental architecture is like nouns. Whatever this means, yeah?
More like moving feeling.
And then it's also very nice how he describes cars. Then he makes a description of a German car, of Italian car, and of Japanese car. And then he says the German car is the perfect machine, the Italian car is romance, and the Japanese car is electricity. Super, super nice abstractions how he talks about these things. Another now example where this game of a person and the car is taken to extreme. So how not all objects fit to all people. Yeah? So certain cars go with certain people. Yeah? And then Seinfeld made the whole story around these comedians in cars drinking coffee. And then, but what's interesting for us here is that he would associate a car to a person. So which car belongs to which person? And this kind of, and then how he talks about cars is also great.
This is a 1963 Corvette Stingray in silver blue with a blue interior, kind of a dark purplish upholstery. Killer. It's got a 327 cubic inch V8, 4-barrel carbs, and proper knockoff wheels. Are there faster Corvettes? Yes. Are there bigger engine tire melting Corvettes? Of course. Are there cooler Corvettes? I don't think so. 1963 is the only year with the split rear window. This car looks like a submarine. Like you could drive right into the water and keep going. It's edgy, it's stubby, it's perfectly proportioned with just the right amount of detail and just the right stance. In the 60s and 70s, all American astronauts in the space program drove Corvettes. When you drive a Saturn V at work, you cannot get out of that and into a country squire wagon.
That's exactly the point, huh? If you drive a space shuttle, you cannot drive a Golf afterwards, yeah? So it doesn't go from space shuttle to Golf. From space shuttle, you need to go to Lamborghini, yeah? It's a different game.
Look at the scoops, look at the nose, look at the tail, look at the door cutouts into the roof. The idea behind this car is just confidence. This came from an American culture that would just say things and do them without having any idea how. We're going to put a man on the moon. How are we going to do it? When are we going to do it? Why are we doing this? No idea. We just did stuff. Crazy, but great.
And then to think...
And I think this cool blue is just...
If you just say these things, huh? It's about the culture and it's about the confidence of doing things. Which car will represent this? Just to try to think of which objects would go with this concept. Yeah, and then he says, okay, it's this car. Of course, it could be any other car as well, but then you make a story and you make it. And now, who is the person that's going to drive this car? Yeah, that's the question.
The right color for my Are You Kidding Me super special guest today, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America, President Barack Obama, who, in my opinion, has gotten off just enough funny lines to qualify for getting on this show.
A few weeks ago, Dick Cheney says he thinks I'm the worst president of his lifetime. Which is interesting because I think Dick Cheney is the worst president of my lifetime.
Now
White
the
House.
whole story goes.
Yes, may I speak with the president, please?
But it's kind of, I think what my point here is to make the relationship between the car and the person, between objects and a certain atmosphere. Yeah? This is the whole talk is turning around this thing. Yeah? And this show is a funny show. And during Corona, I liked it a lot. I thought it's extremely stupid. I could not imagine this title: comedians in cars getting coffee. Like I'm not watching this. There is no way. And then a friend tells me, Jorge was telling me, like, man, it's nice. Look how they're bringing these things together and it's working. And I was like, okay. And then during Corona, you watch a show which is about nothing, so nothing happens, and afterwards you feel good. There's this feel good, nothing happens show. And if you are depressed or if it's bad time like in this Corona, every evening to watch one of these, it's just insane. Then I fell in love with Seinfeld completely. I think he's the best of the comedians because he's about nothing. All the others, they are, like for instance with this black guy, what's his name? Chappelle, yeah? So he's only about the blacks, yeah? So it's the black suffering. Or you have, I don't know, all these other
Netflix guys.
Yeah, they're all
pop stars.
Yeah, or some go directly sex, full-on sex, yeah? Or they have very specific profiles and very specific style of doing comedy, which is always directed to a specific audience with a certain moral of the story. And with him, he makes jokes like, for instance, comedians in cars getting coffee, like, what is this? And it's kind of, or then he makes jokes about muesli or something like this, yeah? Like very, very interesting. Not easy to copy. And then what I did with Soll is again the same game. It was kind of trying to construct a character by creating objects around him. Yeah? And here it's always in the same game, but why is this now not loading?
We live in a world that seems to be constructing problems rather than having.
So it of course starts with the plenty. Yeah? Always everything starts with the plenty, with all the things. And then by introducing different people who talk, so by giving voices to different characters, and by creating objects around this one thing that you
Soll
want to
plenty,
create,
did Soll take plenty?
these things become alive. Yeah?
I don't know. It's a lot. He took a lot.
So Petra
I
is
gave him a
talking
lot.
there, Adil is talking there, Jorge is talking there, I'm talking there, this guy is
He
talking
developed
there,
a lot.
curator. So we have like
Yes, but then Soll takes all the collections and all.
And then we start, okay, we introduce certain concepts, but we start showing objects. So for instance, then Alice is one object around him. Yeah? Then these pictures, this is now loading quite slowly because maybe it's 4K. Maybe it's going to look better like this. Yeah?
Intelligence, we can think of intelligence as the moment that one thing.
Then there is the code.
It's more a product of a human fantasy.
Code, and then you have the coin, and so on. But you kind of by.
But then this dual
objects,
relationship,
this
this I think the explication of that.
After 20 minutes, you get this soul becomes alive. And then what's interesting here is also that the narration of the story and the images which are shown are not synchronized completely. Yeah? So they kind of, the story is more abstract than the images which are happening around. But by connecting all of this in half an hour or 40 minutes, or no, 26 minutes, you get an understanding of what this guy is about. And now two stories on how, what's interesting for me, these are the two most beautiful descriptions of architecture and of paintings come from two philosophers. So first it's nice how, for instance, Deleuze talks about Baroque. So what is Baroque architecture about? And it's a description of a church. I cannot remember exactly which church it's about, but then how he says it, it's so beautiful. It's page 140. This paragraph, if the Baroque establishes a total art or unity of the arts, it does so first of all in extension, each art tending to be prolonged and even to be prolonged into the next art, which exceeds the one before. And I think this, I mean, it's very in sync with what we are doing, with the images and movies and so on. We are just kind of extending from one to another. We have, and when you are, when I'm reading this, it's a picture that you are looking at the dome of a Baroque church, yeah? And you are looking at the frescoes on the top of the dome, and then just follow what's going on. We have remarked that the Baroque often confines paintings to retables or tables. But it does so because the painting exceeds its frame and is realized in the polychrome marble sculpture. And the sculpture goes beyond itself by being achieved in architecture. And in turn, architecture discovers a frame in the facade but the frame itself becomes detached from the inside and establishes relation with the surrounding so as to realize architecture in the city planning. From one end of the chain to the other, the painter has become an urban designer. We witness the prodigious development of continuity in the arts, in breadth or in extension. So interlocking frames, and now it goes on, but I think I have the image for this. Yeah, this is it, huh? You go, you have the painting, and then the painting becomes the part of the wall, and then it becomes the wall, and then it becomes the painting, and then it finds the window, and through the window it becomes the facade, and then the facade becomes a part of the city, and there is a kind of a continuous line that transcends all the media and goes from one to another, or you can call it folding or the line. Maybe folding would be a better way of thinking about it. And what's important here is that these stories and objects, they don't have to be truthful to each other. For instance, this painting is a very famous painting by Diego Velázquez, and it has many different interpretations. Yeah, but then the best interpretation, or the most interesting one, is of course not written by an art historian or someone like that, but it's written by Foucault. And Foucault, in The Order of Things, he starts the first chapter. This is the preface, and then the first chapter is Las Meninas. Huh? So he starts describing this picture. So what this book is about, what Foucault, one of the things that Foucault is famous, and we are building a lot of the stories on top of it, is that he is saying that there are certain things like epistemes. And episteme would be a certain way of thinking which synchronizes all the knowledge of a certain time. So there is an ancient episteme which is one way of thinking, and it's different than the Renaissance episteme, which is another way of thinking. Yeah? And for how they describe it here, but this is, for instance, yeah, the episteme of Renaissance is, he says, but this is very, just to see the difference, huh? Is characterized by resemblance of things. Yeah? So the amount of grass on this meadow is equal to the amount of stars in the sky. This is how you talk about things. Yeah? And then this is equal to that. So you put things in relations and in proportions. And then the classical era, which is after the Renaissance, from Baroque on, is characterized by representation of things. Yeah? So you can create a picture of me, and this is the representation of me, playing with it. And then there is the new episteme, which is the contemporary episteme, and what he's arguing is that this is the birth of men. So there was no such thing as men in the classical era or in the Renaissance. In a sense that, for instance, history, anthropology, sociology, psychology, all of these things, they take as their subject of research men. Yeah? So the society, the men, and so on. And it's a kind of men looking at men. Yeah? Before that, in the classical time, in the Renaissance, and so on, people never took themselves as the thing that they analyze. Yeah? So you could never look, why do I behave in this way? So the question, why do I behave in this way, is a contemporary question. So there was no idea of men or thinking in populations. This is with Darwin and so on. So this is all coming from a specific time. And then what's interesting with Foucault and the beauty of these things is that he pushes this story to this painting. And he's saying this painting is a painting that in a way brings together the Renaissance understanding of things with a kind of representation of things, but it shows that there is the men is present. So it's opening the door to the man. And then how he is describing, or the main argument is that, for instance, this guy, the painter, is looking at the canvas, and in the canvas is me, yeah, or you. So I'm the part of the painting, because everyone here is focused at the thing which is being painted, and the thing which is being painted is outside of the painting, yeah. So it's here in front, but actually it's not outside of the painting. You can see it here in the mirror. So in the mirror you see the people who are outside of the painting, and they are here on the painting. So you have this kind of a mirror of representation of things, but this is the classical Renaissance understanding. But what's happening is that the person who is outside of the painting, and this painting, according to Foucault, should be placed on the floor, and you are, and these figures are of real size. So you really, it's kind of, the idea is that the person who is looking at the painting is a part of the painting, and is constantly exchanged with the guys who are here in the mirror. And then he has like 40 pages on trying to make this argument of what he's trying to aim at. But I think what for me is interesting is that this story is not inherent to the painting. Yeah? This story is an external story of this painting that you put on top, and by putting this story on top, the painting becomes better and the book becomes better, yeah? By creating this synthetic relationship between these things. And this is, I think, how the masterpieces grow. So you create an object which in itself has the codes for future things. So by putting this thing here, this frame, this mirror, and the thing which is outside, he gets this mirroring thing which is open to different games, because this canvas here, and the thing which is outside of the image, they are the same, but they are radically different in all these things. Yeah? So one is the reflection, one is the real thing, and the real thing is actually the thing which is not there. So you can create a kind of an interesting story about what is representation there, and the whole book is trying to argue towards the creation of the idea of man. Yeah? And to be able to get the idea of man, you have to go beyond representation. Yeah? You have to put yourself on the scientific table in a way. Okay, we have two more things to go with. So now let's continue with scenographies. Let's take on, so the next title is on playing scenographies. And let's look at one movie. It's French Dispatch from, what's the name? Not Wim Wenders. It's Wes Anderson. I don't like the guy too much, but I think it's a very nice way how he makes his movies, or especially this one. Yeah? And this can be very fruitful for us in a sense of what we want to get. He pretends like he's in a theater. And this is how, for instance, our renderings could look like, and the way how he approaches the picture in the video should be the way how we approach our images. You see, for instance, how it's again titles separating things into different chunks. Look at the scene. Still frame, we are in a theater, we are looking at one thing, and then only the things in the picture are moving, but the picture is never moving. Yeah? So his pictures are always still. Text is present with the image. Different type of media. Yeah? He's putting the film, and then he's putting the newspapers. Again, still image, only the things
began
inside
as a holiday.
are moving slowly.
Arthur Howitzer Jr., college freshman, eager to escape a bright future on the Great Plains, convinced his father, proprietor of the Liberty, Kansas Evening Sun, to fund his transatlantic passage as an educational opportunity to learn the family business through the production of a
All the
series of
objects that
travelogue
are coming are very
columns to be
specific
published for
because it's
local
fully
readers in the
theatrical
Sunday
setup,
Picnic
yeah.
magazine. Over the next 10 years, he assembled a team of the best expatriate journalists of his
architecture,
time
right?
and
Just
transformed
planes,
Picnic into the
sections,
French Dispatch,
grenades,
a factual weekly report on the subjects of world politics, the arts, high and low, fashion, fancy cuisine, fine
And the
drink,
whole movie is
and
done like
diverse
this.
stories of human
What's
interest
interesting,
set
and
in
we will see
faraway
now, is that
quartiers.
he changes media. He mixes the media inside of
He
the
brought
movie.
the
And
world
so
to
at one moment
Kansas.
it becomes a cartoon. So bring all the stuff that you like. Black and white,
His
non-black and
writers
white,
line the spines
frames,
of every good
and then
American life.
constitute your image in the way how you want.
Berenson, Sazarek, Kremens, Roebuck Wright.
And then he
One
has
reporter
a
known as the
very
best living
specific
writer in
aesthetic,
quality of
and you know
sentences per
immediately
minute.
it's a Wes Anderson movie.
One who
Because
never
it's
completed a
still
single
and
article,
colorful
but
like
haunted the
this, and
halls
these are
cheerily
baby
for 3
colors which are
decades.
very popular.
One
Today,
privately
everything is
blind
kind of
writer
beige
who
and
wrote
soft.
keenly through the eyes of others. The uncontested crackerjack of grammatical expertise.
And now if we go further, you see that it's, these kind of things.
On the
That he
occasion of his
changes
funeral,
it
by which
into
time
this.
the magazine's circulation exceeds 500,000
But it's always the
subscribers
same
in
game.
50 countries.
How he
A willow
constructs the
hamper
image.
containing umpteen pins, plaques, and official citations
And
of
this,
the
for
highest
instance,
order
when you
is
will do
buried
your
at his
final
side,
presentation,
along with an
it can
Andretti
be in this
ribbon
style
and a
that
ream
you
of
mix
triple
these
bond
things in an
Egyptian cotton
interesting way,
typing
how to
stock.
tell a story. I think there are only a few scenes where he
mission of
actually, look at this is great.
Like every living city, Ennui supports a menagerie of vermin
You
and
create a kind of
scavengers.
frame and then you can change whatever you want behind
The rats which colonized its
frame, yeah.
subterranean railroad. In the
Will that make you be satisfied? It won't depress me.
This
I
is
should have
directly
studied hard.
Photoshop.
And you, Robichaud?
I
And
have
now
no
we
choice.
go from this
I work
to
for my
Prada,
father's glass
and
factory.
it's the same aesthetic.
Someone has to take over.
Exactly
It's
the
not
same how Bokhari
What's
is
your art?
working with
What's your
Prada.
plan?
This, for instance, can
I
be
suppose
a
I'll
commercial
continue
for
to be an
Prada.
attractive wastrel like my cousins on both sides of the family.
Skinny, nice boys on top of
What about you,
beds
Marcel?
with Italian t-shirts. Yeah?
Marcel, what do you want? Do you want?
Set like light as well, you know.
Everything is staged.
Miro inspired.
And it doesn't
who
want
hope
to
to
be
see
real.
themselves
That's nice.
like this.
It doesn't pretend that it's
The
real.
touchy narcissism of the young.
Try the patience of your viewership. Take good stuff. Get to pot.
I just want to end with the cartoon. Where is it? Or this, huh? Super architecture. Yeah, this is a section. One is in one room, the other is in the other room, and you make a wall in between. And then you change and you go to south. And again, the same game. So what we don't want with your stuff is to make videos which are moving. So we always want to have a still thing, and then inside of it you can do things which are moving, yeah? But keep the stillness of the frame. So with the projects, think of one shot which will show your building from the outside. This is your establishing shot where you give it a kind of a character, a vibe. So is it strong, is it powerful, is it dangerous, or is it soft, and it's polite, and it's like this, or it's something in between. And then we go in and we have different scenes. or we can go to the garden depending on what's going on. But always try to think of it in a scenographic way. What do you put in which plans? How do you construct an image? What is the composition of an image? What do you want to tell with it? How do you relate it to your story and to your text? And what things are you talking about when you show these images? And this is a kind of a nice example to see, for instance, how one kind of professionals do it. Let's go then directly to Kohlhaas. This is now Prada in what they do, and it's the same game. Look at how it's done. You have the sky, but now the sky is the Milky Galaxy, and how they construct the images out of things. So these images that we do, they don't have to be realistic, but again it's the same thing. Strong textures, strong elements which suggest a certain type of space, and then you have something which animates the image a little bit. These are all beautiful graphics, how they look like, you know, their controls. Here the topic is the fashion, yeah? And for us the topic is the architecture around the objects which are moving. And how do you get what is important for architecture when you create these kind of spaces? What creates architectures are the rhythms always. You have the rhythm of the glass, yeah? Then you have the rhythm of the dots on the glass, then you have the rhythm of the pipe. So architecture is always repetitive in certain extent. So you have to organize the structure of things, and then you fill them with interesting symbols or with things that you care about. But there is always a certain structure to it, and there is always a kind of a texturing to things. And OMA is very good with texturing of things. For instance, I love this image because in this image there is nothing spatial, yet the image is so spatial. Yeah, so what do? You put a carpet in a certain perspective, then you take an image of some random stone with a little bit of grass, or how do you call it? It's kind of mold, or I don't know how to call this green.
Moss.
Moss, yeah? And then this becomes the wall and the ceiling. So you almost get a kind of a sense of a dome. You put the door, show the space which is behind of the door. So doors and windows are extremely important when working with these things. Don't forget doors and windows. Doors and windows are things that help architecture to relate to other things, to the outside world or to other sequences of things, and they bring light. So here are the windows that we cannot see, but it's clear that the light is coming from one direction. Then you have paintings, furnitures, and all of these things that you put, but they are very specifically selected in order to create a certain atmosphere. So this image is fully constructed, like for instance with Wes Anderson. Yeah? These kind of games, I think, are extremely fruitful because they push us to construct these things, to play with them. Yeah? So bringing and composing things, weaving things together. This is the tecton, architectonics, architecture. This tecton part means weaving things together. And then playing around with it. You know? Saying it's constructed. We don't want to show anything real. We want to show a certain image of the world or the cosmos or the cosmetics of your project. In my understanding, what's where Kohlhaas and OMA are very strong is with the texturing of things. Yeah? So for instance, look at this image. It's just texturing of stuff. You have one wall with this beautiful purple fur, and then you have the floor with a kind of mist style marble, yeah? And you get this, and this is a setup for a fashion show. And then you have different rooms just changing basic geometric shapes from circle to, I don't know, hexagon, and then to a square or a triangle, playing with textures and creating space with super strong identities, and it's very important to have the windows and the doors. And then, for instance, here, or with Kazuo Seijima, the windows and the doors are brought to the level of a model, which means they have no thickness. Then it creates a surreal space. Or if we go, for instance, to Le Corbusier, to Ronchamp, then the wall is like this thick, yeah? So that the window almost creates a space in itself. You get a different style and a different vibe of what's going on. I love these things, and if you go and check houses made by OMA, look at the textures, how powerful they are. And this is something I think which today becomes a very, very contemporary, because somehow all the shapes we have, we don't care anymore. So these things can be however you like. Yeah? Play, compose with any way you feel it's good. Interior on the level of exterior is the same. Huh? You take an object, you just change the material, bam. Create another texture here, and then you have these textures here. So it's a play of textures, old elements and new elements, and just emphasizing and bringing things. So it's also these echoes of the existing things which are there. Playing with textures, I think, is very, very, very important. That's why we will suggest that you always unfold your objects. So if you have a cube, unfold the cube and try to texturize it in a way, and then think of what objects would fit to go there. Look at your text, look at your panoramas, bring these things in relation, and create a stage. And then at the last moment of the semester, the last week before we end, make a section or make a plan or make one drawing which is able to relate these different things. The beauty of working in a way that each object or that each room is one scene is that they can be independent. So they are not functionally related, they are not dependent on each other. You are going to this enfilade from one room to another, and there is no causality between them. Each one is a story on its own, and then in the last moment we will do the major architectonic move, where you bring the rooms together, when you bring the text together, when you bring the movie, combine it all and represent it or present it as a project. Or just to go back to texturing and the OMA, now in Milano they were doing a kind of something there, like the marble people asked them to sell marble for them, and look what they did, it's so beautiful. It's just strong textures, fancy materials, and good light. Of course, proportions as well. Yeah? Here it's kind of stripped away from any story, but it's strong. I mean, the stories, yeah, look at this, and now we go back. This is Mies directly, huh? So these are architectural references. But these, look at these stairs, they're so good, huh? And what's interesting here is that these things are quantum in a way, huh? Because it's not marble. It's the marble that emits light. So it's fake. It's the stairs, and it's the light, and it's the marble. So what I think we can do today, and where we can go with architecture, is really designing the materials. And especially that's why we work with Blender and with these things, that you can change textures of things. So you can have glass with the texture of wood. You can have wood which is transparent. You can have wood which is emitting light. So you can crisscross these things. You can take references, change the materials, scale them up, invert them, play with them, work with them. So you don't have to start from scratch. You always start with a full table, with the plenty, and then you play these objects and their textures. Huh? So nice, huh, with these things. And you can say, okay, it's a little bit kitschy, it's a little bit like this, like that. That's fine. Use your aesthetics and the way how you want to work with these things, but play with the plenty. Don't model things. Find things online, bring them together, and do something interesting with them. Or you can invent the whole thing. And this is, for instance, this. This is you have, this is Mozart, and then you say, okay, this Mozart works with this stuff. Because this object, now I'm making up stories, yeah? Because this object is a poem. This is a computational poem, which is like this, it has 20 lines, and you click, and then these things unfold. And they almost have the rhythm of the music which is there, and they are kind of in sync with the clothes. This is bringing these other universes together. It's not directly references, but it's playing with a lot and the computation in a specific way. I love this, how this fits. Like these two figures are almost like these two, and it's completely computational, yeah? And then this is Theodore, just selecting cutters. Not beautiful stuff. And what's here again, you have Mozart with his stories, you have the costumography, you have the scenography, all of this kind of fits together and creates a kind of a nice whole. And you can never see it from behind, and there is no need to see it from behind, because we don't care is it truthful or not. And now back to the textures, just to show that these textures, yeah, where they are coming from. Huh? This is a strong reference for these things. And for instance, with the marble and the stone, you have so many different examples around the world of people playing with it. And if you go to this, we went 2 years ago to Barcelona Pavilion, and go there and just, wow. It's more contemporary than 90% things which are happening today. And when you think that this is happening at the same time, when Gaudi is building it's unbelievable, yeah? This is same time, yeah? This and this.
I think Gaudi died in the early 1930s, no? Or
you know, when Gaudi died, this is my story. Gaudi came to the opening of the Barcelona Pavilion, and then when he saw it, he jumped in front of the train. He was hit by a tram, yeah? And this was 1931, and I checked he was still alive. And then he saw this and he said, I'm gonna kill myself. I cannot stand this anymore.
And nobody cared about him because he was homeless.
Yeah.
But people thought he was out.
And this
are you building a project now?
No, but and we went to see this, and then we went to see Sagrada Familia, and I'm sorry to say this, but when you come close to Sagrada Familia here in front, it looks like it's a cheap gas station. It's very bad to say, but I'll still say it. And then the same game is happening in front of the World Trade Center. Yeah? I don't know if you know these guys, Rex, they're kind of cool. Again, the same building done with this kind of mirroring, and here it gets even better because this stone is not real, it's fake. So even the stone itself is fake. So they just take the pattern and then they work on the pattern. So this is really this design of the material, and then make it in a fake way mirror. And transparent, of course. And look how this looks like. It's so nice. Okay, this is ugly, yeah, but these are the pictures, and I think there should be, this is built, yeah? There should be one from the... And these spaces, I've seen like 5 of them. Where is the photo? And the same thing happens in US, is SOM library. It's again the same game. And there are a lot of churches which play this marble see-through. And this is, for instance, Adolf Loss, yeah, with him, it's always this, the American bar in Vienna also has the same game. So this is just to push, I'm not saying you should do marble, but it's kind of nice because there are like a lot of very cool architects that play the same game with the marble. and I find this kind of very nice, as much as I know. So I would also like to invite you, because this kind of the whole this scenographic thing that we are working, this has been developed, or the initial idea came from Adil to look at this in a scenographic way, and this is a talk that he gave here like one year ago.
What I've been doing here and there in different universities.
So I would invite you to check this,
and
there will be a kind of
let's see if we can
make
some sense out of it. So I will give you a set of indexes. So on the right side, you see National Geographic, which is the camera. So this is the truth.
What opens in September.
So what's the difference between these two images, huh?
The eye of truth. And on the left side, we have the image of the black hole. So the reason why I think they are completely at odds with each other is because one is a synthetic image, one is an image that has been constructed, rationalized, thought about, talking about, etc., and the other one is purely the idea of truth and the idea of purveyors of truth. So this I find very interesting, the difference between the telescope or the microscope versus the camera itself. Because with the camera, there's always the ground truth to look at. So it's always comparative, it's always meant to be held as the reality.
This is the main difference between these two. This is always meant to be real. So you want to capture the real moment, and then what you do actually is use it as a weapon. So then you weaponize it in a certain way how you want to transmit specific messages. But the problem is that my only problem is I don't have anything to do with weaponizing images. Just say it. I'm using this image for this. Then it's fine. This image doesn't want to be real. This image is constructed that you have different satellites, different telescopes on Earth, on different things, and then they're looking at something, and this something comes there to three different things, and this is only data. Then they have to synchronize and correlate this data, and then they have to think, how are we going to show this data in a way that this can be a branding image for our project that we can get more money. So this is an image that communicates complicated physical phenomena to a general public in a pictorial way. And everyone is aware of this. So there is no, here it's like, I captured the moment of truth. Yeah, but the thing with photography is that you always put it in a certain context, and on top you tell a kind of a specific story. So it's always manipulated in a way. The beauty of these things is that they go with it. Yeah, they say, yeah, of course it's manipulated. No one can see the black hole. That's why the scientific images are so conceptually interesting, because they're always constructed. You cannot see the atom. This doesn't exist in this way. Yeah? So we don't know what an atom is exactly. Is this the waves which are coming, or is it a particle, or how does it behave, and so on. That's why we construct these kind of things. And check this talk with Adil. This goes through kind of similar things that I was saying today. He has a little bit different references here, and just play around. Yeah? For instance, this is a very nice one with Greenaway. In parallel to this, check how we introduced last semester the Zero More search engine, and how to start working with the.
So we want to introduce you to.
And this we developed, Jorge and me developed this especially for here, because we had the search engine for text, we had the search engine for images and videos, and this is the third one that brings all the models to the game. And here you have the whole story around this thing here. And what's interesting for me, when I look at this, I don't look at this as something which is old and kind of historical. For me, this is more contemporary than many other things. I would say this is multimedia. This is what multimedia looks like if you want to put it in a picture. So everything here screams, and it screams as 2D, it screams as 3D, it screams as a room, and it screams as a building. So you have all these different scales and things, and it's fully loaded with different stories. So it's like from the sculpture you have a little bit of Egypt here, you have a little bit of ancient Rome here, in the center is the Renaissance, and all of these kind of things are just beautiful. And then half of these sculptures in Galleria Borghese were done by Bernini. So this guy was crazy how many things he did and how they look like. This is like a small factory of things. So check how we discuss and introduce these things here. These two videos would be good that you watch for next week. And with these scenographies, let me just show you a few projects from last semester of what people did and how these things may look like. This one is, for instance, nice. This would be something that we would call an establishing shot. Yeah. So it's an image that shows the whole building at once in a specific context. Yeah. And here you have this. So all of these things are kind of fake and constructed. Yeah. So you have a collage of things together with a 3D model, and you create a certain atmosphere of an object. So so this what you need to bring for next time is one thing, which is to start to work on an establishing shot. So find a perspective from which you want to look at your building, and then start building an image. And then the idea is that for 3-4 weeks or 6 weeks, we work on the same 6 images, or 5, or I don't know how many you want. But then we build them. I think to make a good image, you need to spend time and see what fits, what doesn't fit, and how to discuss these things. Yeah. Or for instance, and then for instance, this is a kind of a section which then brings these things in relation somehow. So you have funny moments here. And the renderings which have a specific atmosphere. So here is I think this might have even some sound, or not, huh? Not really. But you have a specific atmosphere, you have an overlay of video on top, and then there is a text which goes with it. And here you have different kind of rooms. Yeah? The other thing, what's important is to bring these things in relation. So to start thinking how, for instance, you texture things. This is where you kind of unfold them and start texturing things, start putting the windows and seeing how this might look like, or for instance, collecting objects that you would like to have in your scene. And then trying to relate this to the panoramas we did in the previous module. Yeah? Here you have some other projects that you can look at, and very similar thing you have on Meteora pages. Yeah? Here. Look at the presentations from people here at the bottom. Yeah? This is from Meteora. Here you have like 20-30 videos from Innsbruck. We will have them next week, 4 of them. So check how people present, how they talk, and how they make these scenographies. Yeah? To work with, as we say, always go with the plenty. So look for things, and you can look for things on our on Search No More. So here you can go, for instance, and look for a house. Yeah? And we have also the ability to look through the images, but at the moment it's not working. Yeah? So you get this thing, and then you can check only the models. So if you click models, these are all 3D models. If you look materials, you get the materials, and if you look at images, you get kind of PNGs which are transparent. Yeah? So then if you want one of them, you just click download. and you get the dog with its house. If you want to have a model, I don't know, for instance, this one, you can also go to download, or you can go to the source and you see where this model is coming from. So this is coming from a Blender library. Yeah, and if you click download, it's coming. So it's a kind of a search engine where you can, through text, look for stuff. The same, go on Google, look on Google for models, for objects, whatever you need. And for instance, Sketchfab, this is a very nice library for 3D objects, especially this one, Global Digital Heritage. Here you can find a lot of things. They're good models, textured, and you can download and put them into your models. Yeah? They're super, super nice. I love this one. If it would open, this guy is downloading. So just go around, look for things, and play with them. The second thing is what we would invite you to work with. This is like ChatGPT, but instead of ChatGPT, you have Midjurney. So this one you have to pay like $10 per month if you want to use it, but there are other ones like Stable Diffusion and so on, which are for free. So just look around and look for things that you want to work with. Yeah.
Does everybody know, or anybody know about Midjurney?
Yeah. You know this stuff.
You know how to use it and everything, yeah? Or know how it works?
So it's kind of...
Otherwise, there are enough tutorials.
Yeah, there is enough information as well, so just to check.
I think Blue Willow is a free alternative.
Yeah, so find whatever works for you, and you can use it and play with it. What's important is that don't think of these things as finished scenes. So use them to make your own image. Use them to collage things, cut out from there. Try to find things that you like. Yeah? You can, for instance, so I was checking, can I get an isolated object? Yeah, something that I can put in the scene. And I said, okay, can you make a mutant between an elephant and a dragon? And I want to have it in a way that I can now take this elephant, cut it out and put it in a scene. No problem. This is it. And a creature that is a mix of dragon and an elephant, it's a photography on a white background. Great. But now I might say, okay, but it's too scary. I want this to be a little bit more soft. And then you get this one. Yeah? And you just tell him, make it a little bit more happy. And these are kind of ugly, but they work. So I think if you spend a little bit of time with these things, you can use them and you can populate your scene with these kind of objects. Or there is a way where you can blend things. Yeah? So you can blend two objects. For instance, let's, here is the Discord. So if you go here and then you say, for instance, blend, and then you can take two images. I don't know what, I didn't prepare this. Let's take.
There's also a platform which gives you prompts for Midjurney. So if you're not so good at asking, ask the platform, because then it will give you a very focused thing, because you might, I don't know, write a mountain view with like trees or plants, but then you can be a bit more specific, and then it has a language which Midjurney understands, so you get outputs faster, or you get more specific, and then you learn how to write.
Yeah. For instance, we can blend these two images, and we get something out. Yeah. Now it's working on something. And if you want to see this, what Ani was saying, then you go to the place where you can see what community is doing. Yeah, and then you just click on the image, and you can look at it and you can get the description. Yeah? So here it says what is the description, how did this guy get this image? Or you look for what do you want to have, what kind of aesthetics. So for instance, if you want to have these isolated objects, you look how to get it. And this is a drawn one, or a graffiti one, or if you want like this, or you want like that. So this is always good to look what the community is doing, find something that you like, and then see how to do it. And this is a kind of I think this feed is a good image of today's time. This is a kind of an average of things. Where things can get kind of interesting is, for instance, this thing. This is I told him, can you mix Villa Savoie with a Garden of Earthly Delights? And this is kind of not bad, So you can say, okay, with this I can work, and then you can take, for instance, the lower part and put it in your scene, or you can take the upper part and put it in your scene, or you can create a special, I don't know, bottle of whiskey that you need for a certain scene, or you can have a character. So start playing with it. Maybe some interiors you can get the proper framing for them. I think we should try to find ways how to integrate this in the workflow, but not in a way that you say, okay, this is my final project, but somehow that you know what you are doing, that you have the stories, because if you show this, then you have to spend 3 weeks on writing of what is this about. Kind of play around. And especially for things which are in the background. Daniela now with her diploma, she has a designer who is doing fashion, and I think for you to have in the background this kind of stuff of fashion, it's just perfect to do. Yeah, you get your whole collections and you do them very fast, and they work for you. Yeah, but these things that need to be in the foreground, we need to learn how do we construct them, how do we work with them. And now it's time to see what do we do in Blender.
Okay, just to sum up this Midjurney thing, I think we already had a class where we had this chat GPT, not bashing, but this chat GPT output class. Let's not repeat it if you're doing Midjurney. You get what I mean? Like one class when a lot of you just like dump chat GPT stuff as your write-up, and then you got, it's fine. We've done that class once, but let's not repeat this with Midjurney. So, just don't get images to class, which Midjurney gave you. Yeah?
Work with them.
Work with
them.
them.
Find a way how to work with this stuff. Not to take it, I mean, if it fits perfectly for one of your scene, no problem. So it's all, but you have to know what you are doing and be aware of what's going on.
And use all the tools that you know, like Photoshop, Illustrator, or if you want to make some quick small objects or something, but just don't bring that image or just change color or put humans into it, because that's not what we are looking for. So be more engaging with that image of what you get, and use all the medium that you have to make it richer, like what Miro is saying about building this image, not just a cut copy paste. And sometimes if you want to only work with Midjurney, then it's also nice to also get your codes, to also record your codes, because then after the class, if you want to go back, then you know what you wrote and then you know what to change. So be a bit of this documenting kind of a thing, like if you're using it a lot, then start like it will be there on your Discord feed anyway, but if you also bring it to class, then we can also talk about it if it makes sense or what can you add. But don't just write something and then just bring it to class and forget about it. You need to be a bit more archival of it, of how you play with it or how you use it.
These are mixed image, it's not the best, but so the idea here is that we play with things that we already did. Fold the movie, stage the text, stage the movie, fold the text. Find the objects that you want to work with, invent the rooms, and give the whole thing a face. These are the basic moves. And remember, William goes to Silicon Valley. Text, face, context, cityness. This is the outside, and then the inside. This is the game. Public face and private competitions. Public face, this is the facades, the roofs, the openings, and relationship to the neighbors. So whenever you think about your building, think of which buildings in the world are the friends of your building, and think of which buildings in the world are enemies of your building. Create relationships. Look at the setup in which it is and try to think what this building does there, what kind of flavor it needs, and so on. And then we have the inside of the building. There you have your rooms, your chambers, your halls, whatever you have, gardens or so on. Think how they are related to your text. Again, what are their ceilings, what are their openings, what are the proportions, what are the actions, what are the humors, and how this space can host your text. Colors, textures, floors, lights, shadows, temperatures, concepts. And it's important that it's synthetic and that it's fake. So as a kind of what we want, like a recipe, but don't follow everything we say. It's not for granted. Yeah. So you don't have to follow it completely. This is just a direction. So for interior scenes, collect 50 objects, textures, images, models, videos. Use everything you have at your disposal, and then make the folds and articulate the scene. Put these things in proportions, find the rhythms of things, unfold the object, texture it, fold it back, make a scene, put the camera, take a picture. Exterior, the same game. Collect the objects which are related to your story, use everything available, make the fold, again the same game. What's important again is that the interior and exterior, they don't have to fit. You do these things separately, and while you are doing them, you are thinking how this thing might fit, and then in the end, we will fit them together as the last part. Of course, always all these things should be present, but not completely. Don't get lost in the functionalism of things. So you have the link to the Search No More. You have a link to Blender. Download the Blender. You can use any 3D software you want to use. It's no problem. What we suggest is this because it allows all the media. So you can run a movie in the Blender, you can put a picture in the Blender, you can change textures in the Blender, you can put point clouds in the Blender, you can render animations, you can render everything. It's free and it looks always good and it's very easy to render. In the beginning you just need a little bit of time to figure it out. But for figuring out of these things, we have an amazing guy whose name is the Blender Guru. And he's the best. He's super nice how he talks about these things. And I would invite you to go through these 16 tutorials. So each tutorial is 20 minutes. So it's like 4 or 5 hours of doing this. You know Blender, that's it.
You guys have this now already? We sent it in the beginning of the software.
No. So just go through this and you will know Blender, no problem. The other tutorials, we have two more things here which are kind of help. These are the plus. The first plus is...
Sup, you beautiful bastards. I hope you're having a fantastic Thursday.
This guy is not so charming as the first, as the Blender Guru, but he makes a tutorial how to make projections. So you take a light and you put a picture into this light and then it projects the picture on the scene. That's kind of, and it's like 15-minute tutorial.
Being projected on whatever geometry the light hits. You know what I mean. I can't explain it right now, but you get what I mean. On whatever geometry, the light hits. You know what I mean. Tricks that we have. And therefore illuminate this to some kind of low density, so that when we bring up the emission of our light, it's actually kind of cutting through the fog and therefore illuminating our...
And then the last plus is about how do you import point clouds to Blender if you want to work with point clouds. Point clouds always give you very nice contemporary aesthetics. Yeah? I don't know if you have worked with point clouds, but you get this kind of stuff, and then it always looks good. This kind of nature, which is you don't know if it's there or it's not there, and you can
also make point clouds from other platforms. Yeah, you know that from Rhino or from Houdini as well. You can export models, images as point clouds as well, and displace them and apply displacement map and all of that.
So play with all these things. Blender is in principle, very easy, and the nice thing is that you can find a lot of stuff on YouTube around how to play with it. Just go with Blender Guru, check it and play with it, and then use whatever suits you best. So be opportunistic. Photoshop, yeah? Midjurney, and then Photoshop, Midjurney, Premiere Pro, Blender, mix it all together to get the best scene you want to have, and treat these images as constructs. And then the last thing is the scene. You click this and you will get a file of 800 megabytes, which is the file I'm going to show you now. And
we also have this presentation you're showing us constantly with all the links.
This one?
Yeah.
I can send you this as well.
This would be nice.
Yeah, I make a PDF and send you.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, I think this is here. Blender kit, yeah, this one. So you will get this folder. And what we want to do is this, this is kind of a scene. This was my test scene of trying to figure out how these things might work, and of course it's about Alice, and then she has her friends around. But this scene is completely fake, so it's not proper, and I want to show you how you can work with these things. But what's important is that you treat it in a scenographic way. So this is our thing here, and then for instance this would be the rendering of it, when it starts to render it. So you get the lights, you get the flavors, you get the depths, and so on. And you work in this kind of way. And now when we kind of remove this thing, you see how this thing I'm a little bit how this thing is created. So for instance, this background picture, you tilt it in a way that it fits to your view, and you model only the basic things you want to work with. And then for instance, what we have here is a lot of butterflies. These are like images, and then you put one butterfly as a 3D model, and then you have all the flowers which are flat, and then you put one flower as a 3D model. Then from a picture of a thing, you can get this kind of that it looks like it's 3D. It's not called bump map, but it's called something else I cannot remember now. Displacement map, yeah. And then you, for instance, this guy is completely 2D, and then Alice here is also 2D, but then if you want to get, you can start playing then with different tricks. So you see how she is kind of glowing on the edges. And this gives always nice flavor to things. So she's glowing, and this thing in the back is glowing. And this is when you take, for instance, so you can select her. And then I think here, view, frame selected, yeah. Then you can create another Alice. So there are two here, one in front of the other. And if we go to UV editing, or no, to texturing, shading, I'm not expert in this, yeah, it's shading, yeah. Then you can, for instance, make her glow. And if you go through the Blender tutorials, you will figure out where to go and what's happening here. So you just, and then if, for instance, here go to the pink, then she will glow in a pink way, or in some other way. And how to think of the whole scene is, I would suggest again in this kind of way, in a way that you unfold things. and then to see how to texture these things. And then, for instance, what's nice is that if you have your folders organized in a way that you put things in, for instance, for the unfolded image, these are the textures. And you create these textures in Photoshop, and then you just place them there. And then, for instance, this is one texture that I created. I want to have a painting here, then I want to have a link to YouTube, and then, for instance, I want to have a Twitter feed in this triptych, so that this kind of glass becomes a lecture. Then you organize this in Photoshop, you make it as a PNG with alpha channel, and you just import it to the scene. Then you can have different versions, and then check. And this is independent of the scene. For instance, these are the doors which are there. So kind of partitioning of the space and texturing and giving it space, giving it openings and so on. You can treat this through images. If by any chance it cannot find some of the images, for instance, if we take, I don't know, this image and we put it to, if there is an image that it cannot find, it's going to show it in a pink way, then you can always go to File, External Data, and then, for instance, find missing files. And then you have to give it a folder in which all your stuff is, and it's going to go there and check, and it's going to find all the images. But then just keep it all in the same folder, and not with 2 billion images, but just with some of them. So this would be a kind of a suggestion, and then to have for each scene to have a separate file where you work with. And then this guy will also tell you about these collections and so on. And then the nice trick that you can use here, if you will work a lot with objects, is that you make a folder, for instance, where you put all the objects that you like for a specific scene. So for this scene, I want to have, for instance, this car, I want to have a lot of butterflies, I want to have a lot of flowers, and I have a few 3D models of chairs that I want to import. And then I just know where this file is. I can copy the import as a path name. And there is a small script here. It's called import script. And under all of these tabs here, you have the one which is for scripting. Go here to open. Import script Python. You open the file, it's the same script. And then the only thing you have to change is to put here your address of the folder. And once you run it, put the collection, and here you can say, okay, I want new collection, for instance. And then you say, okay, these things will go to this collection, and I run it, and now it's gonna import, hopefully, all the files from that folder. And they're already gonna be transparent, and everything is gonna be ready for work. At this moment, it imports Blender files and JPEGs and materials. Yeah, they're here. So they're in this, in the collection number 8. So since there is a lot of them, it takes a little bit for him to import all of them. So they are all here. And then you can go back to your layout or modeling, and now we have all these objects. Usually I recommend to work with a mouse, but I don't have a mouse, so it's like a little bit like a cripple. So here you have them, you know? You have the chairs and you have the butterflies. Then, for instance, if you think that this is they're too far away from each other, You can then delete it and then go back and say, okay, the spacing between them, let's make it 2. And now they're going to be much closer. And then you can also change the grids.
What was the purpose of the Python script? So you did this for us to have a
I did it for you if you want to, for instance, import 100 objects.
And then it's, everything is ready to use.
Yeah, so you just put these 100 objects into one folder, and they should be either PNGs or Blender objects. So from Zero More search engine and mostly, or Blender files, yeah? And then you put them in and you can kind of get an array of things. For instance, if this helps. And now they are kind of closer, and then if you want to create like a wall of butterflies, like it's here, yeah? For instance, yeah? And then you can also, now if you need to rotate all of them, there are 2 types of, so this you will see with Blender a little bit, right? If you now click rotate. So if we take all of these objects and we want to rotate them, we can rotate them in a way like this, yeah? So they all rotate together. Or if we change here to individual origins, then the rotation will be individual for all of them. So if now they are vertical and you want to make them horizontal, you can do it like this. Yeah? I think these are kind of just important tricks here with this kind of things. Yeah? And I think more or less this is it. So I think what's important for Blender is to think of these things always as a scene and then spend time in constructing these scenes with objects. Don't forget the windows and doors. This is something which is very funny. People forget when they get into this 3D stuff. They never have views. Always have views to things. So it's very important that this window shows something, and this something is then of a Silicon Valley, or we were last semester in Hong Kong, so this is of course Hong Kong. And then just construct it and model like minimal things. So here what's modeled is the hole in the floor, and then a little bit of the ceiling is modeled. The rest is a kind of a composition. And then go to Photoshop, add stuff, and bring stuff from Midjurney and put it somehow inside and play around. I think that's it. And then for next time, let's have an exterior and an interior scene and try to relate it to your text and to your stuff, and just do it. Yeah? So don't think too much, just do something and then we start talking about it. And in principle, for the end of the semester, you need like 4 or 5 images and to make a presentation out of it, and then in the last moment we'll do a section or a floor plan that makes it. And then from now on, let's meet at 11 if this is okay with you, instead of at 10, because for me it's going to be a little bit easier to travel, and we are 7-8 people. Otherwise I need to get up at 5 and now I can get up at 7, yeah? It becomes 1 hour later. And next week
we do the class on Wednesday because I think Thursday is a holiday. It's okay for everybody, right?
This would be great, so we can kind of push it that we have the first discussion, because it's going to take you a little bit of time to figure out Blender, 1 or 2 days, and then to start working, or wherever you want to work.
And we are hoping that you digested the midterm reviews till today, and then today you start working on the second part. Yeah?
And you can still, of course, modify stuff from before and so on. But let's now see how these things will change from the perspective of images. For instance, I love really this with one of these students from Zurich. This girl was
after their heads. And
she was struggling so much the whole semester, like, and it didn't work, and like this, and never happy, never good, and then she did this, and it
make the missing heads appear. Does not this understood.
So, for instance, this kind of games, you take a photo. So this was Wittgenstein's house, and then there was a certain topic, and she just took a photo of the house, put models on top, a kind of 3D modeling that works with her concepts and so on, and then she overlaid a video on top of it, yeah, and it kind of
It is desired body.
has the whole story is there.
That's so
Aesthetically
small.
it works, and then it's nice,
It
for
is now
instance,
as
how
if a
this
single
thing
immense
is
body
getting
had
out of the
dissolved
image
into
into
its
the
parts.
space, so kind of
These
very
parts had been
simple
arranged
tricks
to occupy the whole crypt.
that work
Most
good.
bodies which are rough and angular cause a sense of pain.
Mixing the
In the
photo
violent
with 3D
tension of
modeling and
contraction,
video
he throws
in an
himself
interesting
against the
way.
wall.
So
Part
this
of the
guy
ceiling
is kind of
falls.
dancing in
Door
the
frames
space.
fell
Yeah?
out of the wall. Interruption.
Very, very simple stuff. And she pulled her project in the last week, completely.
She was most expressive, not when she
And her
wrote to
topic was
communicate
about these
movement,
simple
but when
decorations
she
that go
didn't
through,
dance, in
through the
moments
space.
of repose.
Very, very nice. One thing, and then the other one, which is one of my favorite, is this one with
For the first time ever, I got nervous in my own home. What got me through the night was Charlotte's look of pure joy on her face. She basked in the spotlight and laughed her ugliest, most natural laughs on stage. You have the right to femininity, and it looks fabulous on you. Charlotte.
And here what I really like is that to this whole game, this lady brought her own videos. So then she asked her friends to dance on milk and then put it in. And this gives another layer of kind of funniness to these things. Yeah? Animations are minimal, so it's always the fixed scene and just you move certain elements. And then this fits into the whole thing that you are making. Yeah? And it's important that kind of you fall in love with these things, that it becomes fun to make things in detail. And I think that's it.